perhaps here, no?
Yeah.
Yeah, better than.
Yeah, I think you're good. We'll be able to get the logo and everything.
Okay.
We don't want to see the reflection of the faces sometimes.
Yes, right now we have the screen on your face.
Let's get.
So
Yeah,
can
you
you
need to move over here.
Exactly. Shuffle a bit more. I don't want the projection on your face. Can you guys
Let's
speak?
let's
Yeah,
let's do
exactly.
this. Let's do this. No nos contactes, sino mira la gente.
How do you twist this one? No, no, no. Step back.
Shoulder.
Yep.
Yes. Shoulder. Okay.
Everyone looks fantastic. Ready? Right here on 3, 2. That's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Last one. 6 minutes.
Well, since I'm here, I'm just going to daros la bienvenida a todas y a todos. I'd like to welcome you to Instituto Cervantes. My name's Richard Bueno Hudson. I'm the director at the Institute, and it's a pleasure for me to be here with you all in such an important event. I was just chatting to a couple of people outside about the importance about these initiatives and these events, and we support really strongly for, at Instituto Cervantes every action that can help equality, inclusion, diversity, and obviously the democratic values of a job well done that contributes to an equal society. So I should have started from the other end. Dear Excellencies, speakers, guests, welcome to Instituto Cervantes. Let me tell you, since I've got you all sitting down, let me tell you exactly what we do over here. Instituto Cervantes was created in 1991 by the government of Spain, and the mission of the Institute is to promote the Spanish language and the culture of Spanish-speaking countries. There's 100 offices around the world, and this one in New York coordinates the work of all the offices in the States. In the States, we've got Chicago, Albuquerque, Los Angeles, we've got El Paso, Seattle, and we also have the University of Virginia, and also we have an observatory of the Spanish language and Hispanic cultures in the at Harvard University. So we do quite a lot of work in this huge country with so much diversity and with a lot of Spanish speakers. You know that there's 62 million speakers in this country, and from all the different Latin American countries. So we take pride in the pan-Hispanic view of the language and the culture. It's we're very proud about that. We have a huge family of Latin American and Spanish speakers, and most of the activities we do here at the Institute are geared towards their countries and to explain to the Anglo speakers in this country what the rest of the Spanish speakers do. So, how we do it? We do it with two different directions, the academic departments and the cultural departments. So right now, for example, we teach Spanish to at least 2,500 students a year, but the cultural department has different activities going on. I don't know if you noticed when you went into the building, this is a landmark. It's since 1966. And we've got a gallery in the courtyard, and we've got an exhibit right now, which when you go out, you can take a look at it. And that was the exhibit that kicked off basically the Women International Month. And it's like tribute to the two iconic ladies of the Spanish classical music, Victoria de los Ángeles and Alicia de la Rocha. They were very emblematic here in New York. So have a look at that, and then we've got all these cultural activities that represent all the Spanish-speaking countries. It's a great honour today to host Global Women Leaders Voices, to present the Women in Multilateralism 2024 report in New York. Wow, that's quite a highlight. I'm sure most of you know that GWL Voices recently launched the findings of this report in Madrid during their first dialogue. Spain is happy to support the initiative. of GWL Voices is proposing, and the campaigns that they are tirelessly working on. Our President, Mr. Pedro Sanchez, and Minister of Foreign Affairs, José Manuel Alvarez, and our Minister of Equality, Ms. Ana Redondo, have all announced their support, and we, of course, follow track and follow suit, and I'm happy to have Instituto Cervantes as the home of the work carried out. So good job. Great job. Let me introduce to you Susana Malcorra, President of GWL Voices. She was chef de cabinet of Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. Maria Fernanda Espinosa, Executive Director of GWL Voices, who was President of the General Assembly. They will lead this conversation, presenting the findings of the report to all of you today, and share the stage with representatives of Slovenia, Spain, and Mexico. With no further ado, I'll get myself out of the way and like to give the floor to you so you can start with this presentation. Thank you very much for coming and welcome.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you very much. I will start by taking a few minutes to introduce to you what GWL Voices is. Some of you, I'm sure, know us well. Others may be wondering who we are, so let's try and explain who we are. We're a group of women, 73 now and counting. In fact, the 2 more coming our way, integrating our group, that either have worked in senior positions in the multilateral system. That means not only the United Nations, it means the IFIs, it means regional organizations like the European Union or the African Union, or who have worked in senior positions in governments, but have played a key role in the multilateral system. And an example of this is one of our members, who is now our reference, I will say, and that is Madeleine Albright. Madeleine was one of our initial members, and she was not in the system, but she was the first woman ambassador for the United States, and she was a driving force within the system to establish the question of women. The organization was founded by Helen Clark, Irina Bokova, and myself. The 3 of us competed to be Secretary General of the United Nations in 2016, and the 3 of us failed, together with our other 4 colleagues. We were 7 in total competing for the position. And I always like to say that Secretary General Guterres is a dear colleague, a dear friend, very, very solid and very well-established person to become Secretary General. There's one thing he is not. He's not a woman. And that cannot be changed. So, and I say this publicly because I say it to him also. So after the frustration of the process in 2016, Helen, Irina, and I came together saying that probably it would be good for us to do something together to show that after competing, we could do work together to move forward an agenda and issues that we care about. We put our thoughts together, and we finally decided that we were going to do it around 2 issues. The 2 issues that we were most concerned coming from the system. One is the strengthening of the multilateral system. We feel very, very much that the system is under siege, that there is a concerted effort to push back on multilateralism, to push back on the notion of the global public goods. And we thought that we could contribute to that conversation and to the different streams of work to strengthen the system. But we were going to do it through a particular lens that is our second mandate. And that particular lens is the lens of women. We look into the issues of multilateralism, of global governance, of global public goods, always thinking about the women's perspective, women empowerment, and women leadership. And that is the work that we do as GWL Voices. We are vested and invested on those 2 very, very good priorities. We are very focused, and part of our work is evidence-based work. We try to make the case based on figures, on data. And what brings us together today is precisely that. Our second report, last year we launched the first report of women in multilateralism, precisely to measure where women stand in participation at leadership positions in the multilateral world. That first report got a lot of attention, but also got questions. Last year we looked into 35 organizations. When we did that, we showed that only 12% of the time since their inception, women had led those 35 organizations. But people said, why don't you go beyond leadership, go and look at the senior leadership teams, and why don't you look into governing bodies? So the report that we are going to unveil to you today precisely tackles not only women leadership, women in senior teams, but also women in governing bodies. And we have moved from the original number of institutions to 54, which is what we have in our analysis this year. So without any delay, I will leave the floor now to my friend, colleague, and executive director of GWL Voices, Maria Fernanda Espinosa, who, by the way, is the former PGA. So she's a unique person, as you will see later. Maria Fernanda.
Thank you. As I take the stage, perhaps we can start by watching a very brief video that we brought, so ease the transition. Thank you, Susana. Just a little patience. Yeah, I take, of course, I think that we can gain some time saying that we're thrilled to have you all here. Thank you for being with us. Thank you to Instituto Cervantes for hosting us, to Richard Bueno Hudson. He's the director of, and there we go. I was trying to. Well, thank you. I have now also the distinct pleasure I know that you know them, but to briefly say their names, because we're very, very thankful for the partnership and the support. And let me here just mention Embajadora Alicia Buenrostro Macié, the Deputy Permanent Representative of Mexico to the United Nations, Ambassador Ana Jiménez de la Hoz, Deputy Permanent Representative of Spain to the United Nations, and Ms. Sasha Jureko, sorry about the bad Slovenian pronunciation, but she's the Deputy Permanent Representative of Slovenia to the United Nations. We are extremely thankful that you are joining us today. let me very quickly share with you what Susanna mentioned I will do. It's briefly take you through the findings of our most recent report. I think this first slide speaks by itself. We have to state the obvious that women are rare at the top of international organizations. Since 1945, only 13% of the time, the organizations that we have studied and featured, 54 of them, have had only women at the top 13% of the time. And of course, these organizations have rules, cultures that are rooted in tradition. And to understand how they work today, we have looked at their past, of course. And that's what we have learned, okay? Don't worry if you cannot read the names. I think what it's important that you focus on is that what it means is that since 1945, women have made up only 13% of all elected leaders in 54 of the world's most important multilateral organizations, and these include UN specialized agencies, departments, offices, as well as regional development banks. Now let's dig a little deeper. Here, this slide shows that the gender of leaders of each organization since 1945. And what we see is that I think I must come back to show you something here. The organizations at the top are the youngest the oldest at the top and the youngest at the bottom. So you see also that there is a historical pattern, meaning that we are doing a little better. The dark orange segments on your right represent women, and the pale ones at the left represent men. So I am really proud to say that many of the members of our group of GWL Voices account for the dark orange segments that you see at the right side. So we are really speaking from personal experience, and this is, I think, a little shocking to see. Let's move now to this slide. We see that 21 of these organizations have never elected a woman to the top job, not even once, 21 out of 54. 15 organizations have elected a woman just one time since 1945. Just one time, and we call the group of One and Done Club, this also should be changed. And finally, just 18 of these organizations have elected a woman in more than one occasion. So I think that we can say that the progress has been extremely, extremely slow. And now let's look deeper to this graph. This graph shows that there has been a whole decade of the 1970s where these institutions did not have a single woman leader. This is the column of the 70s. And then we have seen steady progress and growth. But, I think that little by little we see that gender parity has gained momentum. From the 2000 to 2010, the percentage of elected women leaders in this organization nearly doubled. So you see from almost 17% to 31.4%. So just in the last 2 years, a total of 8 women have been named at the top job of these organizations. These are, I think very good news. 5 of these 8 organizations really made history by electing a woman to the top job for the first time ever. And here, just to bring some positive energy into this, I would love to share this slide with you. And let's stop for a moment to look at these amazing women. Doreen Bogdan Martin ended 157 years of male leadership at the International Telecommunications Union. That's 1.5 centuries. And believe me, that's why we put their names and photos there, because it really means something. Amy Pope became the first female Director General of the International Organization on Migration. Gisela Sanchez became the first female president of the Central American Bank for Economic Integration. Celeste Saulo ended a 73 years of male-only leadership at the World Meteorological Organization. I'm proud because she comes from our region, from Argentina, and I think that was a major breakthrough. And let's not forget, a Spanish woman, Nadia Calviño, is now the first female head of the European Investment Bank after 66 years of history. So these are the very, very good news, and congratulations, because it really means something, it represents something to all of us. But look at that. On the other hand, let me go back before I show you the next slide. But on the other hand, we have also pointed out that during the last 2 years, some organizations have managed to extend their decades-long tradition of only electing men at the top job. And here I'm also going to say the names of these organizations: the World Bank, the Inter-American Development Bank, the Food and Agriculture Organization, the International Fund for Agricultural Development, and the International Labor Organization. But, the good news is that in the next 3 years, 22 of these organizations, 22, will be electing new leaders. So there will be many more opportunities, of course, to make history, as we saw before. And you can be sure that we at GWL Voices are going to be watching and monitoring for the next 3 years. But, this is not the whole picture. When it comes to power at large organizations, after we published our first report from last year, many of you and many friends and members of our network said, how about the governing bodies of these organizations? And we know that in the multilateral system, governing bodies have more authority than the chief executive. You know that very well. Because governments use their voting power, set the agendas, set the priorities. And in the day-to-day operations, and you know better than we do, senior management teams have enormous influence. So this year we set out to investigate women's representation in these spaces. And here's what we found. Here you go. We found that yes, UN Women, but that's the exception, of course. So we are thrilled to report that half of these organizations are close to reaching gender parity, or have already achieved it in their senior management teams. So the average share of women in senior management positions is 42%. And only 5 of these institutions are stuck below 25%. And I think that this amazing change is really not an accident. It reflects the talent, the dedication of thousands of brilliant women, but it also reflects that explicit policies adopted by the leadership of these organizations are in the right track. And we have to say here out loud that we really commend the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, because he has shown that UN gender parity, through his gender parity strategy, does work. And the evidence is clear. With the right policies and real commitment from the top, gender parity can be achieved, and can be achieved very quickly. Unfortunately, this picture you see here, we cannot say the same about the governing bodies of these organizations. Remember that the representatives to these boards are named directly by governments. And here is what we found when we looked at the governing bodies. And as you see here, women are underrepresented in the governing bodies of every single one of these organizations, all of them. The average share of women is just 30%. And in 7 organizations, women make up less than 25% of the total. Although we can see that there is some progress, women continue to be excluded from spaces that set the global policies on issues ranging from climate and food security to migration to armed conflict. But before we go any further, I want to pose and hear perhaps your thoughts and reactions, or perhaps we continue. I think that we can continue, and I would really like to give the floor back to Susana, because we are an evidence-based organization. We do advocacy based on numbers, on evidence, and also we are able to find solutions, because we can show the big picture, the little progress, but basically we have a very concrete proposal to share with you. And for that, I will give the floor back to Susana Malcorra, our president.
Maria Fernanda?
Oh, give me back
The remote control, that would be great.
Thank you, Maria Fernanda. Numbers speak for themselves, and that's why we really work hard to get those numbers. Getting numbers from 54 institutions wasn't easy, I promise you, but we worked all last year to get where we are. And by the way, we thank the organizations that provided us with the information. We always try to look for practical solutions. If you know our members and you saw at the beginning in the video, the photos of many of our members, we are all practical women. We understand that to move the needle, things need to happen. So not only we speak about it, not only we have an advocacy mandate, but we also want to advocate for practical things that produce impact and reform. Since we are talking about governing bodies, and these are this is a summary of governing bodies in these institutions, I would like to show you the one that is the most shameful of all of them. And guess what? It's the General Assembly. And this is a very telling slide, because it shows that in 70, 80 years of the United Nations, only in 4 occasions a woman presided over the General Assembly. It's just, when you put this there, I don't think I need to speak any longer. It speaks for itself. And there is something very interesting. Those 4 women that are shown there come from what is now called the Global South. India, Liberia, Bahrain, and Ecuador. So this is also something that calls the attention, often is forgotten that the Global South has expressed itself in different occasions and has made the case to show women. So this is a reality. This is what we are, this is what we see. And the role of the President of the General Assembly is a very important role. It's a role that sets agenda. It's a role that sets priorities. And it's important to have a woman sitting there. But it's hard to get women when you see that there are many, many governments that have never appointed a woman permanent representative to the UN or to Geneva or to any of the governing bodies. So this is where we believe that we need to do something about it. And we need to do something fast, because moving forward, 4 out of 78 doesn't cut it. It was interesting that the General Assembly showed a lot of attention to the question of fairness and representation. And back in the 60s, there was a resolution adopted, a very important resolution that we believe has played a very important role in having fair representation of the world, which was the geographic rotation. That was not at the beginning in the case of the United Nations. It was adopted later when it became apparent that unless a rule was set, it was going to be hard to have a fair representation of different parts of the world. Well, you know, that has worked. In fact, we have this year Dennis Francis representing Latin America and the Caribbean. He has shown his interest in pushing for the agenda of gender, and we see him as a champion and a great ally. But how do we see him and we see ourselves as allies? Well, we think we should add a gender dimension to the rotation. What we call, and it's the name for our campaign, rotation for equality. It's not only rotation in geographic terms, it's also rotation to represent the peoples of the world, which, shall I remind ourselves that the peoples of the world are 50-50. In fact, to be absolutely fair, it's a little bit more than 50, the representation of women in the world. So that's what we like to do. We would like to have a man one year, a woman the next. And, since member states will know in advance whether the year that a specific region gets to be at the presidency will be a woman or a man, it will be very simple planning thing, So imagine what it will look like, this picture moving forward. Isn't that great? Isn't that great? By the way, let me tell you something. We used to generate the faces artificial intelligence. And the male face that shows there is what artificial intelligence sees as a typical representative in the UN. So you can come to your conclusions. The question here is this possible? Is it achievable? We are absolutely convinced, and that's why we are here. That's why we have our colleagues at the stage representing different governments. We believe that this is workable. We think that it will be absolutely great to define this as a feature of the General Assembly and to do it in such a manner that for UNGA 80, that means not next one, the one after, everybody gets ready and prepares, we will have the kickoff of this yearly rotation of gender. And why UNGA 80? Because of the symbolism that the General Assembly has for the 80th anniversary. So that will be absolutely perfect. It's 2 years from now, time for preparation. But not only that, it's going to be the year that the UN will decide, and it will finally be blessed by the General Assembly, on the succession of Secretary General Guterres. So there we are convinced that it's going to be a woman at the presidency of the General Assembly, welcoming Madame Secretary General as the first Secretary General of the United Nations. It's a simple, very simple change just to say, let's add gender rotation to the geographic rotation. We think that this is something that will work. We believe that there is an opportunity that member states can come together and show the world that the UN moves ahead, finally, at least on this front. And we think that it will be a good opportunity to showcase a change in the UN when there is so much skepticism in the world about where the UN stands. We have seen already support at the General Assembly, last General Assembly, both the President of Slovenia and the President of Spain fully supported this initiative. The President of Botswana also did so. And after that, in our launching in Madrid, we have here, again, not only the support of Spain and Slovenia, but also Mexico rendered the support, and Uruguay, who is not here with us today, also raised its voice committing to the Rotation for Equality campaign. And to put together a group of friends, which is what we will call on you to move forward, that will really set the stage for this initiative. So very simple. We are here for two reasons. One is Rotation for Equality, one man, one woman, succeeding each other at the presidency of the General Assembly. And of course, in coming month, the Madam Secretary General initiative and campaign that will put a woman at the helm of the United Nations. Having said this, we now move to the conversation, and we would like to hear from our colleagues and from you all as we open the dialogue to the audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Susana. This is, I think, something that we can all continue to work on. I immediately will turn to our panelists here. If in sitting order, perhaps, and I will start with the Deputy Permanent Representative of Slovenia to the United Nations, Ms. Sasha Jureko. And correct my pronunciation to start with. And you know, what is your reaction? Very thankful to the support from the very start from the President of Slovenia and the Slovenian government.
Thank you. Does it work? Thank you so much. It's very good pronunciation. It's Sasha Jurečko. And let me start by thanking the GWL Voices for inviting Slovenia to participate in this very important CSW side event. And I would also like to thank you for this informative and very sobering report that you presented. But I am happy to hear that there is some light in some of the numbers that you presented, and especially I like the inspiring women that are trailblazers in their organizations. Let me also start by saying that Slovenia is strongly committed to working for gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls, and we are really honored to join this conversation here. We fully support and share the aspirations of women and girls around the world to fulfill their full, equal and meaningful place in society, in their societies, but also at the global level. And let me maybe present some of the achievements in Slovenia. We are focusing very strongly on women's participation. And for example, we have introduced gender quotas for all types of elections in Slovenia. That was 2 decades ago. And despite that, it took time for women's political participation to really truly gain traction. In fact, it took, let's say, until our election in 2022, which was the parliamentary and presidential election, where we achieved 40% of women parliamentarians and our first ever woman president. And also, we did also appoint first time ever president of the General Assembly, who is a woman, and first time ever Minister of Foreign and European Affairs, which is also a woman. And we have also made significant steps to ensure equal opportunities in our diplomatic service. In fact, 48% of leadership positions in our ministry is held by women, and 34% of all Slovenian ambassadors are women as well. And this only shows that persistency is key to achieving gender parity. We have not yet reached 50-50, which is our goal, but we will keep pursuing it with the most sincere dedication. Let me now move to the international level. And here at the UN, we are focused on supporting the achievement of SDG 5 on gender equality and all the previous commitments. But it is also important that we make sure that the UN as such, as an organization, leads by example. And this is where this report also comes into play. And here is also where the elephant in the room lays, where the leadership positions do not hold equal representation. And we have heard the numbers about on the SG and PGA, which is very sobering. But let me also add that, which we did not hear, the ECOSOC presidency, for example, has only been held by seven women since 1946. And the Human Rights Council in its 18 years also only had 3 women presidents as well. And also, it was actually already mentioned that our president at the general debate in September emphasized that Slovenia is supportive of all initiatives to achieve the objective of better gender representation at the leadership position at the UN, and that includes the GWL Voices initiative regarding the presidency of the General Assembly. We feel strongly that any forum where issues that decide our future is where women need to be fully, equally, and meaningfully participating in. I also wanted to mention that we have this visual representation of in the GA hall and in the UN lobby of all the Secretary Generals and all the PGAs, which is a very, very strong message. And it's a truly sobering image, actually. And we have had generations of women diplomats and visitors, including young girls, walking past these pictures and paintings and receiving the message that there are limits to what they can achieve at the UN. And this is something that we need to change. We need to ensure that women are truly and equally represented, including by setting normative standards for that. And as was done years ago and also mentioned, we changed that for equitable geographic rotation among the presidents of the GA, and we must equally pave the way also towards more equitable gender representation. And Slovenia is ready to join forces and play its part to make this change happen. And I would like to conclude by pointing out that this issue is multifaceted. It is an institutional, structural, and systemic issue, but it begins with member states. If we specifically look at about the position of the President of General Assembly, who is it that nominates the candidates? It's the member states. And who is it that elects the candidates? It's also the member states. So our task ahead is to get an overwhelming support by member states to have a good number of member states on board. So I called on all the member states present here today to join in our efforts, and I call also on the civil society representatives that are present here to support and to demand better representation of women in multilateralism, and in particular in leadership position also at the UN. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ambassador. Thank you to Slovenia once again, and thank you. And your message is very well taken. You said persistence and political will, and believe me, women, we are experts in persistence, and we will persist. And here, if you allow me, I would like to acknowledge a person before I give the floor to Ambassador Jiménez de la Hoz, and it is Griselda Lopez, and I'm mentioning her. She's the permanent representative of El Salvador here, but she has led as co-facilitator of the working group on revitalization of the General Assembly. And she has really been pushing hard to make sure that in the election of the president of the General Assembly, we truly have, a gender approach and gender perspective. There is a very important resolution that was put forward. In next year, we will have yet another resolution on revitalization. And we are really, we have high hopes that there is going to be some specific language on that as well. And ask Ambassador Lopez, because she's an expert on the line-by-line effort that needs to be made on that front. So without further ado, I have the pleasure to give the floor to Ambassador Ana Jiménez de la Hoz, Deputy Permanent Representative of Spain. You have the floor.
Thank you so much for giving me the floor. Thanks for the invitation, and to the Instituto Cervantes for kindly hosting us. You were recognizing, and rightly so, the ambassador of El Salvador in the audience, and I would like also to recognize former Minister for Equality of Spain, Viviana Aido, who was really a trailblazer in many of the issues that we are discussing today, and is conducting a very successful career in UN Women, so it's a placer verte. So from my side, I agree with the points that already Sasha made about the importance also of this issue for my government. And in a very brief presentation, I would like to highlight some of the initiatives that Spain is working on in terms of gender parity from a national internal point of view, and also as part of our feminist foreign policy. In terms of our internal politics or internal arena, we have a government with two vice prime ministers. We have parity in terms of ministers in the cabinet, and the government has presented a law for the consideration of Parliament about gender parity. This is a very, very advanced law which would really guarantee gender parity not only in the public sector but also in the private sector for companies with more than 500 workers who have a capital of around 50 million euros. It also has provisions to change the electoral law to guarantee that every time that there is an electoral list, both at the central, the regional and the local level, there's an alternation between women and men in every list, which is really, I think, a very, very advanced and very positive move. So that's something that is important from the point of view of what we are doing in Spain. And then, as I mentioned, Spain is very proud to have a feminist foreign policy. We have an action plan for 2023-2024 that was drafted with in a very inclusive manner with the participation of all main actors, both from the political arena, academia, private sector, civil society, etc. As part of this foreign, of this feminist foreign policy, Spain has always is very big and has been very, very supportive of gender equality, empowerment of women, fighting against violence against women, promoting all those parts of the United Nations who work on those issues, and providing more than 100 million euros to these organizations, full support for the work that the Special Representative of the Secretary General for Conflict-Related Sexual Violence does. And those are sort of key initiatives of our foreign policy, together with the fact that after the approval of the most recent law for international cooperation and global solidarity, there is a commitment of the 0.7% of GDP by 2030 to implement the SDG agenda, the Agenda 2030, and of course SDG 5. So it is in this context that the issue of gender equality and gender parity has a very meaningful action for us as Spain. We are fully supportive, as you already mentioned, of the initiative for the next woman as a Secretary General, and what Susanna put very nicely, the rotation for equality, which I think is a very good way to put this. The alternation, I mean, I think it has a different connotation, and I think it's a very powerful way to put that together with the very interesting findings of your report. We discussed briefly before the meeting, and there will be more discussions after this gathering about how we can flesh it out in a way that is efficient, in a way that brings about the results that we want, because we can't fool ourselves. And we are in the second week of CSW, but when CSW finishes, there will be other issues which will call our attention. We live in very fragmented geopolitical times, to put it mildly, for all of us who are working in the UN arena. We know how difficult all these issues are. So for me, going forward, it will be very, very important to build up a very strong cross-regional alliance around this issue. So this is also discussed at the capital level. It's not foreseen as something kind of imposed from New York. So by the time we come up with a specific initiative, whatever it may be in the end, the support is there. So just I think this is just a step on a sort of a long road that we have ahead, but you have our full support and commitment. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador Jimenez de Laos, and thank you for the support of your government. And as you put it very well, what you do globally it's a mirror of the effort that are done domestically. So we are, we commend Spain for leading the charge on with its feminist foreign policy and what it's doing and the new law for gender equality. I think that the global should inform the local, but the domestic efforts should also translate into the international system. So we really thank you again. And let me now turn to Ambassador Buenrostro, Mexico, yet another country with a feminist foreign policy. And very quickly, since we are acknowledging the audience here, I wanted to acknowledge former Minister Viviana Ido, but also acknowledge the presence of UN Women Director for Latin America and the Caribbean, Maria Noel Baeza, also with us, a front line of super top, powerful women from UN Women, which are great allies in our endeavors. So you have the floor, Ambassador Buenrostro.
Thank you very much, Maria Fernanda. And I would also like to acknowledge the presence of the permanent representative of El Salvador, of Viviana Ido, of Maria Noe from UN Women. And I also want to acknowledge and recognize your work. It's very stimulating to see that GWL is working, on these specific issues. An organization, a platform that brings together all this data and that is working precisely on the empowerment of women and seeing exactly where the gaps are, where can we bridge, where can we really make a difference and how we can work together. I would like also to mention that we will have a presidential we will have a female president for the first time in Mexico. Mexico is one of the countries that will be having general elections on the 2nd of June. Both the candidate from the opposition party is a woman, and the candidate from the official party is also a woman. So we will have a woman president in Mexico.
For the first time ever, Ambassador.
For the first time ever. And in a very macho-oriented society, very conservative, and also we being an independent country for the past 217 years. But this is the first time ever. I would say as well that mobilization of civil society presided over by women has become stronger and stronger in Mexico. We have already achieved a little time ago, parity in both chambers, at the Senate and at the Chamber of Deputies. And if you see candidates for local governments, you will see that for the first time ever, you will see a very important number of women as well. So in that regard, we have seen very important changes. We need to acknowledge that. Still, we are lagging behind in many other areas. And I would like to say that Mexico also has a feminist foreign policy. With Spain, we are presiding over we are co-chairs of the group of countries that have a feminist foreign policy here in New York. We will try to be as constructive as possible in terms so as to really have some events that can really enable us to share best practices, how is it working and so on, because it's still something that is being built as we speak. Many countries have been, are more advanced in what they have undertaken in terms of projects and so on. Some of us are still, I believe that you cannot talk about feminist foreign policy if you don't have, starting at the foreign ministry with lactancy rooms or with positions at the different departments where you can have positions for women who have young children, that can only have a part-time position, and that doesn't neglect them the possibility of striving to the top of the career. But having said that, I will mention that Mexico will be organizing the third summit of feminist foreign policy. We would love to see all of you. That will take place on the 1st, the 2nd, and the 3rd of July in Mexico City. And we will keep on building with all of you. But, and then finally to say that we have a great foreign minister who I wish her the best, and who you know very well. But I also like to comment on your report, to be very, to also, make some comments on the, and I would say on the really good thing about having produced this report. And for us, we really want to congratulate you for this, in particular because there are very concrete ways, as you have mentioned, at the General Assembly. We also, of course, back up, the, how is it called, the rotation for equality, of course. So, but I want to, we have already read the report at my mission, and we consider the findings not only very timely in the context of the election processes that will take place in many countries, and in the multilateral fora as well, as you have already portrayed, and but also the findings are clearly presented and extremely useful. The fact that the report is available in all UN languages of the official languages of the UN is also, it adds an incredible value. And now the information in the report, well, we can see that still we are a male-dominated world of governing bodies. And even if decades have passed since the adoption of several international instruments such as Resolution 3025 and the Beijing Platform of Action and Recommendation 30 of the CEDAW, here we are. And we are here with few women in top positions, as we have seen, not only in the multilateral world, but in a world that desperately needs more women, more mediators here and there, from Gaza to Ukraine, from migration issues to human trafficking, from coup d'etat to serious threats to democracy and to human rights. Just let's acknowledge, the issue of human rights, so polarized in the negotiation processes. So this means that we can never take it for granted, and that every day we need to keep on striving. So we have our International Day, right? We have the International Day of Women in Multilateralism that we celebrate every January 25th. And our contributions have been praised and recognized, but we need more. We need to be at the table, as Secretary General says, not at the side of it. And we need to have more spaces that allow us to keep working, the rest of the year, the next 364 days. So the Women, Peace and Security Agenda, for example, shows that women who have a role as agents of change and positive transformation are not sufficiently valued or recognized. Recognition of women's experience remains very limited, even with the abundant evidence of the importance of women's contributions in the 4 stages of peace: in prevention of conflict, in negotiation, in peace building, and in peacekeeping. So allow me to make reference to the part of the report that says, the UN General Assembly, perhaps the most consequential of all governing bodies, is emblematic of this problem. Women make up only 25%, as we have seen, of all ambassadors, and each year member states elect a president who serves as chair and presiding officer of the General Assembly. So since 1946, 74 men and only 4 women, as we saw, have been elected to this position. And in that same line of thought, we haven't had a female Secretary General. So, of course, Mexico supports the rotating formula, and we would love to see a female President of the General Assembly giving, and welcoming the first female Secretary General, for sure. Now, the time has come for many and obvious reasons. And one of them is because, as the report highlights, increased representation of women enables their contributions to innovative policies and norms, rectifying gender power imbalances. And this leads to more balanced and equitable decision-making structures, which is absolutely important. Our world needs that, and in the face of the pushback that we have been experiencing in human rights, the increase of armed conflicts, the crisis of multilateralism, and many other complex situations all over the planet, we need to incorporate other ways of doing things, of dealing with urgent worldly matters. So in this regard, you can definitely count with Mexico all along the way. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ambassador Buenrostro. And yet again, we see, a coherence between, what happens domestically and how it mirrors the international scene. So thank you so much. Susana, to you.
I want to add a couple of comments. First, on feminist foreign policy. One of our members is Margot Wallström. She was the first foreign minister to decide that there was a need for a feminist foreign policy. And she did it because she saw it firsthand when she was a special representative for the Secretary General in the field, the impact of violence on women. It was in Sweden, and we now see Sweden moving backwards and putting aside the feminist foreign policy, as we all know. So I wanted to mention this because whatever gains we have seen, as big or as little as they are not a given at all. Yeah. So not only we need to push forward on these issues, we need to make sure that we stand strong to protect the gains that have been achieved. So that was the first thing I wanted to mention. The second thing I wanted to mention is that another member of our group is Alicia Bárcena, the Foreign Minister of Mexico. This is to show to you the breadth and weight of the members that we count in our group. And lastly, I wanted to convey a message. I met yesterday the ambassador of Qatar, Ali Al-Thani, and she told me she was not going to be able to be here, but she wanted me to convey the full support of Qatar to this initiative. And I wanted to say it because you rightly pointed out this has to be a representation of all regions of the world, of diverse cultures, and the fact that Ambassador Al-Thani has already indicated the commitment of Qatar, I think is a good signal for what is coming.
Thank you, Susana, and thank you for the good news about Qatar. Thank you, gentlemen sitting at the back. You're the only man besides the director of Instituto Cervantes, and or perhaps I missed someone else because my glasses are not great, but I'm the only one that I that I see. So welcome. Now I think we have a few minutes for reactions from the audience. And we will, do we have a microphone around? Okay, Juli has a microphone, and please, okay, and Maria Noel has the microphone, and we can share the microphone. Please, over to you.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to listen to all of you, and it's a great work that you're doing, Susana and Maria Fernanda, really to raise this important matter. That picture, it will stay with me, 4 women only, president of the GA, and as you rightly said, it's the member states that take the decision of these important decisions. I am happy to say that we are more than 40 member states that are pushing for feminist foreign policy, and I'm so looking forward for Mexico meeting, because this is where we should raise these issues also, because they have to be aware, the Ministries of Foreign Affairs, that this is happening. It's the same as negotiations with the CSW. The first week is a party of all the ministers of gender of the world, but the second week is negotiation of full points and lines and, going backwards in the agreed language. So we have to address these matters with ministers of foreign affairs, with men ministers of foreign affairs as well. And I think we have to do something about it. So please count on young women to support you in all this. And don't forget that this time, the Secretary General should be from Latin America and the Caribbean. And for me, that is essential that we repeat it everywhere. And we will be very happy to support. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Maria Noel, and thank you for the encouraging words. Gentlemen,
Thank you.
bravo for being here before you even speak.
Thank you very much.
You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, Madam. I'm General Diop. I'm from Senegal, and I'm the military advisor to the Secretary General. And I would like, first of all, to thank GWL for this wonderful initiative. I hope will be repeated as many times as needed. And I would like also to thank you for the invitation. I hope next time we'll have more men participating in this meeting. So I came for 3 reasons. The first one is that I strongly believe in women's leadership. I have the conviction that for our future to be prosperous, for our future to be peaceful and stable, we need to make sure that both men and women work together in the right harmonious environment, without any discrimination, with respect, and in a very collaborative way. It's about our future, it's about human rights, and it's about so many things you have touched on. So we need to make sure that this is the case. We cannot afford to leave 50% of our population aside when we're taking major decisions that have impact on every one of us. And when we are together, we have a better collective intelligence. We are always better. We are more capable. That's the first reason. The second reason why I came is that recently I was invited in Morocco to participate in a panel where we were discussing multilateralism. And at the end of our meeting, we all came to the conclusion that multilateralism was badly challenged. And multilateralism, we all agree, is the least worst way of organizing the way we live together peacefully. And it is challenged by populism, by extremes. And we need all of us to roll up our sleeves to make sure that we save multilateralism. If we want to live in a peaceful world, in a stable world, in a world whereby people can enjoy their well-being, we need to save multilateralism. And in this fight to save multilateralism, women have a critical role to play. That's the second reason why I came. The third and last reason why I came is that as the military advisor, the highest rank in the UN security system, I have the responsibility of many missions throughout the world. I have peacekeepers all over the world. So I'm responsible of peacekeeping, and peacekeeping is one of the faces of multilateralism. Because we have many countries joining their hands, mutualizing their efforts to bring peace to those who need it, to solve conflict. And yet, we don't have in this collective effort to promote peace and stability, we don't have enough women, particularly at the decision-making level. So I think also this needs to be part of the discussion, how we can strategize together so that we can have women at the decision-making level in the security institutions, particularly in peacekeeping. Making sure that the uniformed gender parity strategy is implemented in a way that we reach our targets of 11% of women this year in our units, but also 25% of women in our individual uniformed personnel. And even this percentage, to me, are not very ambitious. We need to have parity in everything we're trying to do. And I thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to share those thoughts. And thank you. Good luck. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I think all of this, every word was music to our ears, of course. Especially your 3 reasons for being here. And believe me, we need more men like you. In this struggle. So thank you, because the 3 reasons do make sense. And basically, we work every day to make sure that we collectively build a gender equal multilateral system, not because it's demographically fair, because it improves the quality and effectiveness of the system as a whole, including the agenda on women, peace, and security. So thank you once again. I don't know if there's someone else that would like to take the floor. The person back here, and then Ambassador Lopez.
Thank you very much. I'm Beatrice Maillet from the Canadian Mission to the United Nations, so it's a great pleasure to be here. I facilitated many years ago at the Commission on the Status of Women the agreed conclusion on the role of men and boys in promoting gender equality. So I'm very much aligned with your comment and the comments of our previous guest on making sure that we are inclusive on our engagement. That being said, like many of us, a week ago I was standing in the GAL when the first speaker and the second speaker and the third speaker and the fourth speaker, and suddenly the fifth speaker were all men for the Commission on Status of Women. And it's only when we have this lovely woman from civil society bringing her voice that the energy in the room changed. And really, you could sense the complete difference in the electricity in the air. So I'm very much aligned with your goal of making sure that we have gender parity in the highest ranks of these organizations or any multilateral organization, including for the presidents of a General Assembly and all our dreams of a Secretary General. But in the meantime, like Ambassador was trying to make changes and revitalizations on the rules of procedures, I would hope that we can, in the short time, change also the protocol so that we make sure that we have alternate genders talking in every commission or every opening of every event at the UN. In 2024, 2025, it is time to have the voice of a man followed by the voice of a woman, or vice versa, the voice of a woman followed by a voice of a man, so we can actually see all of us ourselves in the speakers that are there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Canada, and thank you also for the support to this initiative and for being, a trailblazer in gender equality in all fronts. I've been in the multilateral scene, believe me, for more than 25 years, and Canada has been, leading also the charge for so many years, yet another country with a feminist foreign policy. So thank you for the support. I turn over to Ambassador Lopez. Now you have the floor.
Gracias. Thank you so much, Maria Fernanda, Susana, and also to Instituto Cervantes for opening the doors for this, I believe, stimulating event. To my colleagues for their thoughts, and thank you also to our colleague from Canada for pointing out the rules of procedures. I don't want to go too much into details, but as Maria Fernanda mentioned, I was co-chairing the ad hoc working group on the revitalization of the GA. It's just a fancy name to say the reform of the General Assembly about how to make it more effective. And one of the things that we put forward was the reference to recognize that there was not a woman Secretary General yet. You cannot imagine how difficult it was to agree on that. It was a fact. It's a fact. And yet, member states didn't want to recognize it. And the paragraph, when we also take note that there were only 4 women PGA, and we encourage member states to nominate more, that was another battle. Endless battles. And then was like these concerns, like why highlighting these issues? And you know, it's about visibility. It's about recognizing that something should be done. And the third is recognizing that there was not gender parity and equitable geographic representation in the senior positions of the UN, and also making a call for member states to do something about it, and also for the executive leadership on the UN, another battle. But we won them. Those references are there. And the problem is that in the rules of procedures, that is basically how the General Assembly conducts its work, like saying, you know, the president has to open the floor, the voting, and so on. Those were written back in 1945. And guess what? They said the president of the GA, he. The Secretary General of the UN, he. The committees, the 6 committees of the GA, it's the chairman. So we wanted to change it to, you know, be more inclusive, gender neutral. So it was like he, she, and so on. We work on that, and we work and we scan all these changes that should be done. Then we have the challenge that it should have been done in the 6 languages, because remember that the UN has 6 official languages. But each of these changes will have to be according to the grammars of the language. We did all that. So we were like working on this with the work, with the valuable support of the Secretariat, making all these changes. We were in the last day that basically it was 2 a.m. in the International Day of Women in Diplomacy, June 24. And due to the opposition of one member state, they were not adopted. So those rules of procedure should be amended. So my call in this event, regardless if you're from civil society, if you're a member state representative, bear in mind the following. The rules of procedure should be changed, and the opportunity is in the next resolution of the GA reform that is going to be next year. That rotation, the gender rotation of PGA, should be included there. So if I kindly invite you to put forward that, and also to raise awareness of that only for women, but the need to have more. And definitely that should be a battleground. And the other, just to tell you that I want to recognize that you, Maria Fernanda, also are working with the future generation of diplomats. And in that case, we have seen how many network of women diplomats have been already established. AMDE, for instance, Spain is a very consolidated one, but others have been like just starting to be created. So GWL Voices definitely have to make awareness of this important report so they can also start pushing in their own ministries to make a change and nominate more women in these crucial positions. Thank you. Gracias.
Thank you. Thank you, Griselda, again. Thank you, Ambassador. And yes, indeed, we know how much energy and wisdom you have put into the process. And we know that for us, a change in rules of procedure, it's common sense, but it's really not common sense. It's more difficult than what it sounds. And we need to continue, to struggle and to strategize collectively. I don't see any more hand up. Before I turn to you, no more.
It's common sense, but it's also about power. So we must not fool ourselves. This is a power struggle. This is what is behind. So we need to be totally conscious and aware of that. You know, it's not simple. It can be hidden behind rules of procedures, but it's something deeper. And I just wanted to remind ourselves that when we go to the Charter talks about men and women, the rights of men and women, that they have equal rights. So the Charter that was written in 1945, in a way, is more progressive and forward-leaning than much of the thinking that is taking place these days. But also, and I want to pay tribute to Latin America and the Caribbean, the role that women play in those discussions from the region. Remember that OAS had already been established, and the Charter of OAS had included some of these concepts that will allow for this to be embraced in the end in the Charter of the United Nations. So yes, some of the issues are new, but they're not so new, and they are recognized in the Charter that 193 member states have adhered to by becoming part of the United Nations. So we just need to stay the course and work for it relentlessly. No other way.
Thank you all. This has been great. You know, this is a QR code for you to download the full report. Just take a picture and download the report and spread the word. Thank you for being here. Thank you to these amazing supporting countries and the ambassadors present here. Thank you all again for being with us, and let's spread the word and let's continue to work together. So thank you 100 times. Thank you. Thank you to Instituto Cervantes. Thank you so much.
¡Qué gusto! Excelente presentación. Bueno, tú, que eres muy entusiasta. No, and the rules and procedures are of enormous importance. Definitely. Thank you very much. I keep describing, you know. Thank you so much. Hola, yo soy Andrea Rentetti, no sé si se acuerda de mí. Bueno, yo acabo de llegar de la embajada de Ecuador hace 2 semanas, así que estoy hablándome al calor, claro, vengo de 35 grados acá. Bueno, me dijo la embajada, muchos saludos, vamos a sacarnos sí, sí. Yo llevé el PMA
mucha fuerza y yo sé que el trabajo de funciones
dijeron que había llegado así.